$14.62. That's not the price of a coffee. That's your total balance. Your phone screen glows at 11:21 p.m., casting a blue, clinical light over the cracked ceiling of an apartment that always smells slightly of someone else's cooking. You refresh the app. 11:22 p.m. The digits don't move. Still $14.62. You have a credit card maxed at $3,800, a car note that feels like a ransom payment, and a paycheck due in 4 days that's already been dissected by rent and utilities. You are 24 years old. You tell yourself you're just starting out. But every time the fluorescent lights hum in the grocery aisle, you do the math. You put the roasted dry fruits back. You grab the bag that's mostly air and yellow dye. This isn't poverty, not the kind they show in movies. This is level 0. It's a low-grade fever of arithmetic. You don't talk about it because your friends are all wearing the same "I'm fine" mask while splitting an $11 appetizer 4 ways. At 0, money isn't a tool. It's a predator. You're not managing it. You're hiding from it. The first rule: at this level, your bank account is an emotional barometer. Every low balance alert is a personal indictment. Then the small win: a tax refund, a bonus. $4,200 hits. For 1 hour, you feel invincible. Then the water heater leaks. $1,100 gone. You realize that until you have a buffer, you don't own your life. The universe's accidents own it. You start saving. Not because you're greedy, but because you're tired of being scared. You land the role: junior associate, $44,000 a year. You celebrate by buying a coffee that costs $6 and feeling a sharp, familiar pang of guilt before the first sip. Your life becomes a loop of gray cubicles, the smell of industrial carpet, and the heavy silence of the 6:14 p.m. train. You carry a plastic badge around your neck like a leash. The direct deposit hits: $1,340 every 2 weeks after taxes, and the health insurance you don't yet know how to use. You watch the number land, and for the first time in your life, you don't move it. You don't reward yourself. You leave it sitting in the clinical white space of the app. The grind isn't a movie montage. It's a slow, beige erosion of your 20s. You bring leftovers in mismatched Tupperware that smells faintly of dish soap. You say no to the Thursday night drinks because 1 round is 3 hours of labor you'll never get back. You hit $5,000, then $9,000. Your car makes a rhythmic scraping sound every time you turn left, but you don't take it to the shop. You learn the difference between a genuine need and a psychological itch. Every month, you move $700 to a separate account you've promised yourself doesn't exist. You're not building a fortune yet. You're building a wall between yourself and the person who had to put the roasted walnuts back. You hit $15,000. You're 26 years old. You stare at the 5 figures like it's a religious relic. You don't spend a cent of it. The psychological weight of that cushion changes your posture. You stop saying "sir" to people who don't deserve it. You start reading, not the get-rich-quick threads, but the boring stuff: annual reports, tax codes. You learn that a salary is a subscription to someone else's dream. You're making $67,000 a year now. You're stable. You're successful by every metric your parents understand. But then you run the spreadsheet. You project 30 years of this. The number at the bottom is safe. It's comfortable, and looking at it makes you feel like you're staring at a coffin. The second rule: a salary is a ceiling dressed up as a floor. The why hits you on a random Tuesday afternoon. You're staring at a spreadsheet that isn't yours, doing work that won't matter in 10 years. You look at the bosses in the corner offices, people who traded their youth for a better view and higher blood pressure. You realize that no matter how hard you run, you don't own the treadmill. There's a hunger in you, a restless itch that says you weren't born to just be a tiny gear in someone else's machine. You're tired of asking for permission to take a vacation. You want to build something with no ceiling. You start a side project. You don't tell your boss. You spend your Saturdays in coffee shops, building something that doesn't require permission to grow. It makes $300 a month, then $1,200. You don't buy a better car, you reinvest. You buy your first asset, something that earns while you're brushing your teeth. By the time you're 29, your brain has changed. You see a flashy new SUV on the road, and you don't see success. You see a bill that would have killed your progress. Your friends are talking about deserving a break, but you're obsessed with buying your freedom back. The hunger isn't desperate anymore. It's cold and quiet. You aren't working for the $1,200. You're testing the machine you built. You stop caring about your job title and start focusing on your exit plan. By 31, you're not just managing a balance sheet. You're managing a life. You get married. It's not a flashy, cinematic wedding. It's small, intentional, and paid for in cash. You realize that a partner is either the ultimate force multiplier or the biggest leak in your bucket. Luckily, you're both looking at the same map. Your income from the business hits $12,000 a month, and for the first time, you feel a different kind of pressure. It's no longer about surviving, it's about providing. Then come the kids. 2 of them. Suddenly, your freedom fund feels like a security blanket. You're 34 now, and your net worth is $650,000. You buy a family car, pre-owned, reliable, safe. You don't care about the badge. You care about the side impact ratings. Your maturity isn't just in your bank account, it's in your patience. You spend your evenings changing diapers and your late nights checking the cash flow on your rental properties. The hustle has quieted down into a steady, rhythmic discipline. Entering your late 30s, the numbers start to behave strangely. You're making $220,000 a year between your salary and the business, but your lifestyle hasn't moved. You're still wearing the same 5 t-shirts. You're still fixing the leaky faucet yourself. But the brokerage account is now a beast that feeds itself. You hit $1.2 million at 39. You expected a parade, but instead, you just get a quiet Tuesday evening and a $14,000 gain while you were reading a bedtime story. The milestone is a whisper, not a shout. You check your portfolio and see a gain in a single day that used to be 6 months of work. You didn't do anything to earn it. You just existed. The millionaire title feels hollow because you realize $1 million at a 4% withdrawal rate is only $40,000 a year. It's not a throne. It's a life raft. By 40, you've stopped trying to prove anything to the world. You've traded the need for status for the reality of time. You look at your kids and realize that the greatest thing your money ever bought wasn't the duplex or the stocks. It was the ability to be completely present at their soccer game on a Wednesday afternoon without checking your email once. The fourth rule: wealth isn't about what you can show. It's about what you no longer have to explain. By 48, the arithmetic is gone, replaced by physics. You have $25 million, but you don't have it in a bank. You are positioned. You don't look at stock tickers. You look at the way cities grow, the way power grids fail, and the way generations shift their habits. You have a team that filters the world so you only see the signal, never the noise. When you sign a paper that leads to 200 layoffs, your hand doesn't shake. Not because you're cold, but because you're looking at the survival of the whole organism. You feel the distance, the quiet, heavy canyon between your desk and the real world. You realize wealth isn't what you accumulate, it's what you no longer have to endure. The quiet pivot. At 54, the number hits $100 million. You've moved from owning assets to owning the systems that create them. You sit in a boardroom with 4 other people who speak in shorthand. No one raises their voice because volume is for people who aren't sure they'll be heard. You ask one question about where the capital is flowing, and $1 billion firm changes its entire 10-year strategy. This is power, clinical, silent, and absolute. You are successful in every way the world measures, but your greatest success is that you own every second of your day. By 60, you cross the threshold into the $1 billion mark. It didn't happen because you worked harder. It happened because you became a market maker. You stopped betting on the game and started owning the stadium. You reach this number by identifying a massive infrastructure shift, perhaps a transition in global logistics or a new way of managing data, and you moved your capital there 5 years before the rest of the world knew it existed. Your reputation has become a financial instrument. Your name on a deal is enough to secure the funding for it. You are an elite now. This isn't about the private jets or the houses on 3 continents. Those are just the logistics of your life. The real elite status is the access. You have a direct line to the people who set policy, the people who decide how the future will look. You aren't lobbying them. You are advising them. You possess a level of pattern recognition that looks like magic to outsiders, but it's just the result of 40 years of never flinching. You are 65. Your life is a masterpiece of intention. You have the health of a man 20 years younger because you've treated your body with the same discipline as your portfolio. Your children are grown, capable, and grounded, not because of your money, but because they watched you value character over consumption. You are successful in every room you enter, but you find yourself entering fewer of them. You don't need the applause anymore. Then, you look out the window. Down on the street, there's a kid in line at a cafe. He's 22. He's looking at his phone. His balance is $14.62, thinking of purchasing a good coffee. He thinks he's writing a story about money. He thinks if he just makes more of it, everything will be solved. He doesn't know yet about the distance. He doesn't know what it will cost him in time and in the person he used to be. He doesn't know that the machine doesn't care about his happiness. It only cares about his consistency. It rewards whoever shows up every day with discipline. He puts the good coffee back and buys the store brand and rushes to get a seat on the bus. He again looks at his balance. It's $14.62. It always starts there. It always will.